Greetings. How are you guys doing? Great worship set with Paul Blosh just now, yes? Well, guys, we're privileged to have with us a very wonderful couple, and we've had them at our other events, and their heart and their vision for the church and for the next generation is just palpable in their ministry, and we're so glad to have them with us. And the other cool thing is we're streaming this next session here. So it's going to go out to people all across the country and across the globe, which is pretty cool. And I'm assuming you guys have heard of Christy and Nathan Nockels. Yes? Anyone? Yes? Well, as you know, Christy has a brand new record out, Into the Glorious, just came out a couple weeks ago, and it's fantastic. If you don't have it, I think they've got it here for sale. And they're going to be leading us in worship tonight. It's going to be fantastic. Would you guys welcome Christy and Nathan Nockels?
How are you? Good. Hang on. Okay. Can you hear me okay? All right. Well, this is just one of our favorite things that we get to do sometimes. We will try not to talk your head off, but I guess it's kind of what we're here to do.
It's kind of the point, yeah.
But we want to try to leave a time for Q&A if you have questions. This is my husband, Nathan.
Hey, how's it going, man? Good.
Nathan and I have been married we're coming up on 17 years this summer, which is fun.
Yeah. Oh, come on. Yes. It was a hard 17 years. I mean... A clap. No, it was awesome. It's been great.
Close. Nathan is a producer. For those of you who don't know that, he has been producing records since we very first, actually before we got married. When I met him back in 1993, I had actually met his friend, Charlie Hall, the year before that, which was like my junior year of high school, which is hilarious. Met Charlie at a church camp, and I started dating one of their friends.
You know Charlie Hall, he leads worship on Passion Records? Yeah. Goatee, bald.
He wasn't bald then. He actually had hair about my length. But so did Nathan, in fact. And we all had the same length hair.
We did, yeah.
And he and Charlie had a ministry together called Nathan and Charlie. It's really original.
We had a friend thought we were like a ventriloquist act. Like Nathan and little Charlie, my little puppet.
But they had actually quite a following kind of in like a little tri-state area. And the university that we both went to, Oklahoma Baptist, they had quite a following there, and so I kind of knew who they were through their little concerts that they would do and stuff, and I just always thought the world of Nathan, but he was dating someone, I was dating someone, and it kind of just was a miss there for a while until we kind of saw each other out at Estes Park, Colorado, where I think they still have the Christian Artist Seminar, but back in the day it was like this huge thing, and a lady from our church kind of had sent me to go, and same with them, that kind of this lady had paid their way to go, he and Charlie, and I got in line that night to see Rich Mullins in concert, and just was standing there in my little cowboy boots and my long Amy Grant hair, and I looked and I was like, I think I know those guys, and sure enough, it was Nathan and Charlie, and they were like, come come up here? And I cut in line with them. And then the next day, it was just Nathan and I were taking long walks in the woods and exploring the mountainside and kind of staring into each other's eyes. And each night I would ask my mom and dad to pick me up later and later. I was like, well, can you come at midnight tonight? And they were like, what is going on? And, it was just this, really, it was kind of love at first sight, even though we kind of had been acquaintances, but it was like he wasn't dating anyone, and I had kind of just broken up with this guy, and, or actually I kind of had some breaking up to do when I got home. But the truth is revealed. But but I had actually told the guy, I was like, when I come back, things are going to be different. I just can't deal with this right now. I'm leaving. But we just hit it off, and it was kind of on. We were just remembering that just a few weeks ago. Kind of at our church right now, there's all these singles, and we're just kind of like, would y'all just get together and get married? And, it's enough already. And it was just kind of like when we started dating, it was just on. It was like, we're doing this thing. And got married about a year and a half later and started, I kind of naturally just was woven into Nathan and Charlie, and what they were doing, I would kind of go and sing backup. And then eventually we formed a group called Sons and Daughters, and that was with Charlie. And kind of we wrote some of the songs, Charlie wrote some of the songs, and really just kind of wanted to do that for our local church that we were all kind of started getting involved in. And at the time we borrowed some money from this wealthy guy in our church and to make a record and together. And so Nathan's been producing since that time, and we just had this friend who had this little studio in Oklahoma City, and we just started just making records together. We had no idea what we were doing. We were in our young 20s. I was 19 when I met him, and just had no idea what we were doing, but we just went for it. And so it's neat we're just going to kind of tell you a bit of our journey together. But Nathan, I just appreciate his gifts so much, and he's a genius. He really is. And I don't just say that. I mean, I really believe that he's so gifted, and then he's very humble, and just appreciate, I guess, just his work ethic and the father that he is to our 3 children. And it's been just the joy of my life to get to do this all these years together. And it's just been incredible. So it's quite a lot to celebrate when we do hit those anniversaries, because it's like, man, we've, not only have we kind of grown up together, but a lot of ministry, a lot of, God just working in our hearts, and still, he is. And so that's just encouraging. But anyway, that little record that we made called Sons and Daughters, that was actually kind of the beginning point. We had no idea what God was going to do through those songs. And we had this little apartment that we lived in Oklahoma City, and we really we didn't have much furniture. We didn't have much to our names, but we had this little piano that his grandmother had given us. And that's what we did with our time. I mean, we just wrote songs in our little apartment, and we had no idea what we were writing for. I mean, we were involved in the church, but these songs really weren't getting sung at our church at the time. It was just kind of like, what are these for? And I was working full time to help. He was finishing his degree at Oklahoma Baptist, music education, and I was working at this little preschool at this church, and how many ever hours a day, and 5 days a week, and we would just write these songs in our house. And I remember driving in the car all the time and just being like, what are these for? Like, why are you giving us these ideas? And I hear these string parts in my head, and God, why are you doing this when it doesn't seem like these songs are serving any purpose, or no one's getting to hear them, and our church is certainly not leading these songs, and what are they for? And I remember these moments of just literally feeling like the Spirit of God was just coming down in our little apartment. I remember one time specifically we were writing this song called Holy Roar. And you have to keep in mind, most of you look like you're kind of about our age, so you remember this time in the early 90s that there wasn't this huge worship movement going on. There wasn't this corporate outward expression where thousands of people were gathering together to worship. And that was really unheard of. It was just beginning to happen. Our church was kind of a vineyard style church, so it was definitely happening in our church, but not, I grew up Southern Baptist. It wasn't happening in that camp of people. There weren't thousands of youth or college students gathered together at a time to lift up the name of Jesus and live for his fame and his glory and his renown. And that wasn't really happening. And so I remember writing this song called Holy Roar, and Nathan kind of was playing, and I stopped singing for a minute, and he kind of turned around. He's like, "Are you okay?" And I was just face down on our carpet. And I was like, I don't know what just happened to me. This has never happened to me before. But as we were just singing those words, I got this picture of thousands of young people gathered like in a stadium. And they were lifting up the name of Jesus, like their hands were up, and it was like this holy roar was happening. And we were both like, can you imagine if that were to ever happen? And it was just this like moment of like, what was that? Could that be in our generation? Could that happen? And as that record kind of came together, we continued to write, and we recorded it. Nathan produced it, and Charlie was in on that with us. We had no idea, but a friend of ours at the time gave this little record. He wasn't our friend at the time, but he became our friend later. Gave that record to a guy named Louis Giglio, and he said, "Hey, I found this record. Some of my students from Texas A&M have this like bootleg copy of these kids called Sons and Daughters. They're from Oklahoma City. It's like, you have to hear this." And little did we know that Louis and Shelley were at Baylor University, had just basically passed their ministry at Baylor called Choice to a whole line of other leadership, because Louis' dad was dying, and they were going to move back to Atlanta, where he's from, to help take care of his dad. And so they had just passed off their ministry there, were headed to Atlanta. His dad actually died before they could even get back settled in Atlanta. And so he and Shelley now are in this season of life going, what in the world is next? We just gave off, our ministry to these people, and that was everything everything they were doing was just wrapped up in this ministry. And they're like, what's next? And they had just begun to pray the very prayers that we were singing. And Louis says he remembers being in Roswell, Georgia, where he was on the road when he had to pull over on the side of the road because he couldn't see to drive because he was just weeping. He's like, who are these kids? Because they're praying verbatim. They're singing the prayers that Shelley and I are praying. Because they had been saying, could this be a global ministry that could rise up, a movement really of collegiate students that would gather together to live for the fame of Jesus. And we had no idea, but at the time God was birthing Passion, which we've been a part of for 15 years. And just this past Passion, January, we do this conference, January, kind of the first week. It's a good time for students, not a great time for families, but the students love it. And we spend a week with these students, and this past time we had 45,000 students gathered at the Georgia Dome. And every time we gather there, I think of Holy Roar. I think of that moment of being on the carpet in our little apartment. And I hear that roar of these students, in the stadium. And I think God really is present in our lives, and he's working, and he's weaving us into this grander story. At any point, do you want to inject anything?
No, it's good stuff. It's great.
I always offer. You don't know if he's going to accept, but so anyway, it's, I guess, just what we love to encourage you with today, whether you're a songwriter or a worship leader or a musician in the worship team or whatever it is. I think that just encouraging you where you are, because I think it's such a great reminder, isn't it, that we were just in our little apartment in Oklahoma City. Nobody knew our name, and I was working at this little daycare, and Nathan was finishing school, and I remember just praying those prayers in my car, just, God, what are these songs for? Like, what do you have for us, you know? And it just seemed like kind of a long season of our lives, a good couple of years where we were just like, we feel like we're just going to continue to bloom where we're planted, make a stir where we are. We're going to continue to just cultivate faithfulness. And God, as we did that, just kept opening one door after another. And it's neat to think, you know, of David. You know, he didn't get a fancy internship in the palace for Saul. You know, he wasn't there, you know, kind of knocking on doors. He was out with the sheep. And I love that because God he knows where to find us. David was where he was supposed to be. He was doing what he was supposed to do. He was doing what was right in front of him. And for him, he was the youngest son, and that was his job. He was a shepherd, and he was playing out in the fields, you know, to the sheep. But God knew where to find him. And God literally plucked him from the pasture and put him in the palace to soothe Saul's soul with his music. Isn't that beautiful to remember that he wasn't out knocking on doors to try to get a place in front of Saul. He was just doing what God made him to do. He was a shepherd, and he was spending his time. And also I love that, you know, that he played in the fields for the sheep. You know, it's like, that's just this beautiful thing altogether, of just this audience of your creator, you know, and his creation, and you're just being fulfilled doing what you're doing, and all of a sudden a guy comes to your house and anoints you to be king. You know, it's pretty incredible that he knows where you are today, and he knows where to find you. And I think that one of the things that just continually has, I think, just continue to encourage us through the years, and also I feel like the thing that has kept us in a place of constant just at his feet first has been just this realization, and that God will lift up your cause. I think that even with us, you know, with being in the music industry for a lot of years and being on a couple of different record labels through the years, there's always that tendency to want to carry your own cause and to make that the banner of your life, and to spin your wheels saying, I'm going to lift up my cause. I'm going to make sure that everyone knows what my cause is, and I'm going to lift it up if it's the last thing I do, and I'm going to spin my wheels, and I'm going to, you know, make sure everybody knows the cry of my heart. And I think it's okay to let people know what your cause is. But I think that one of the most beautiful things that God started to show me through a time of having to lay things down. And that was during this time of, you know, after Sons and Daughters, we signed a record deal with Rocketown Records. And at the time, Michael W. Smith had started this label. Of course, in our day, you know, Michael was just as big as you can get, and it was this wonderful thing. You know, we were like, oh, this is great, you know, and it's like this little family. And but even through that time, we felt like the Lord just kept saying, cultivate faithfulness and stay faithful in the small things, and I will lift up your cause. And we did. It was a good season. It was 5 records as Watermark, the two of us together, and great season of our lives. Had little babies, you know, and on the road they learned to walk on the bus and all those things, and had a pack and play in the back lounge, and we would go on these big tours. And I remember laying in the back lounge with our son Noah, who's 11 now, and watching him just like catch air off of his little pack and play as the bus was going at night. I'm like, this is the weirdest life. But just trying to stay faithful in that, and really just always having this heart of like, God, just keep us, you know, humble and faithful before you. And remember, he tested that in the biggest way when he asked us to lay down our Watermark journey. After 5 records, it was really like 8 years of our lives. We felt like the Lord was saying that season is over in your life, and that was really hard to hear. And I kind of didn't understand it at first, But we knew it was like both of us began to like sense this restlessness. And it was like, what is that? We'd talk about it, and it felt like God was just saying, become available to me, become available to me. And it was like, we are, we're doing this. We're on the road, we're writing, we're recording, we're touring, and we are available to you, God. We're doing our thing, and he's like, no, become available to me. There's a lot, you have a lot on your plate. You have a lot on the table. Put everything out on the table so that we can see it together, and let's talk about it, So we just kind of started doing that. It was like, what's on the table of our lives? Okay, we have church, we have our record label, we have our management relationship, we have booking relationships, so all these different guys in our lives, interjecting, and it's like, what are all these ties? And one by one, the Lord was like, get a blessing going out, break that tie, lay that down. It's time to lay down the watermark journey, lay it all down. We were like, really? And in my heart at the same time, because we had young children, it was like a yes in my spirit, like a yes and amen. Even though I didn't understand, it was like yes and amen. I need time. I need to stay home. And so it was a season of a good 3 years where we just were like, can't explain it. Don't need to re-sign our record deal. We love you guys, but we've got to move on. And so in that time, Nathan, we built out a great studio in our basement. And he kind of just went for, producing in that time for a lot of Christian artists. I remember just a good season of life of Phillips, Craig, and Dean wailing in our basement and doing their vocals. And it was surreal. I was just home. I was home with our kids, and he was making records, for these other Christian artists. And they'd come to our home, and I was just home. I was just like, cleaning toilets and, buying food and it actually not rotting in our refrigerator. And because I was there, I could cook it. And it was this new season of life for me. And I remember, kind of sounds silly, but as I was literally cleaning a toilet one day, I sensed this fulfillment like I'd never felt before. And it was like, where is that coming from? Because I don't like cleaning toilets. I liked it better when we were on tour and I had to have someone help me clean my house. Where's this coming from? And the Lord brought me back to actually the verse that I was saved through when I was 7, when I was a child. It's Psalm 37. Delight yourself in the Lord. He will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him. And he will do this. He will make your righteousness shine like the dawn and the justice of your cause like the noonday sun. I was saved through that verse. I learned to handwrite it. And for whatever reason, it was attached to this little name plaque in our house. It said, Christy, follower of Christ, Psalm 37:5. Commit your way to the Lord, and he will do this. He will make your righteousness shine like the dawn and the justice of your cause like a noonday sun. So the Lord brought me back to that verse during this time of my life of just being at home and being still and having to let go. And he showed me that fulfillment was coming because he's both the instiller and the fulfiller of our desires. Because that word give kind of jumped off the page at me for the first time. Like, delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. He will show you what your desires are. He will show you what your desires are, and then he'll fulfill the very desires that he puts in you. And I think it's season by season. I think it changes. But that's why you have friends, that are like, we're selling everything we own and we're moving to Africa. That's because God has put that desire in them, and then he's going to fulfill them. And you're going to be like, how are you so joyful in that? How are you so happy leaving your family and leaving everything you know? It's because God put it in them, and then he's fulfilling them through that. And so God started showing me that. And then this place of where I wanted to start writing again, I was like, in this new place of kind of trusting him with that. It was like, okay, I kind of, feel this after 3 years of being home, this stirring to write again. And it was like, well, will I ever get to record again? Will I ever have a platform to sing again? And the Lord just continued to show me that verse, commit your way to the Lord, trust in him. He will make your righteousness shine like the dawn. and he will hold up your cause. And the message said, he will stamp you with approval at high noon. And so he started to show me that I was kind of, in that time, I was in this place of worry that I was, I had to get my cause back out there. I had to lift up these songs that were rising up in me again. I had to be the one to start spinning my wheels and I got to get it out there. I've got to, I don't have any management anymore. I don't have a record label anymore. So it's my job. I got to do this. I got to start, and it got this tension and this anxiousness in me to kind of lift up my cause again. And the Lord just kept saying, I'll make your righteousness shine if you'll rest in me. And he showed it to me kind of like a target sign. It's like if I was able just to hit the bullseye with what was right in front of me, my family, my children, cleaning toilets, he was going to take care of the outer rings of my life. And he began to show me that in the sweetest way. And I know sometimes it's frustrating, and our first reaction is to start getting in all the outer layers. We want to start getting in those outer rings and making sure it all gets done. But yet he's just saying, what's right in front of you today? That might be for you, completely different thing. Maybe it's your church. Maybe you're on staff there. Maybe it's your job that you have to have 9 to 5 so that you can, do songwriting on the side. Whatever that is, do that, and do that with faithfulness. Cultivate faithfulness in that bullseye. For me, it's my family. It's Nathan. It's my children. It's maintaining just my home, and obviously my relationship with Jesus. And I find in the most extraordinary ways, God has shown me that he will take care of the outer rings of my life. He will lift up my cause. He's done it over and over and over again. And I really, I'm on a label. I'm on 6 Steps Records, and that's under the kind of the Passion umbrella. But really, God is the one who's lifted up my cause, and he's been the one who has kept saying, I know where to find you. You don't need to be out there spinning your wheels and running yourself ragged. There's a place of rest for you and me. And the more you rest in me, the more that I will show you I'm extraordinary, and I will stamp you with approval. I will lift up your cause. So that's just been a place of, I think that's been continual for us. And it's been a place that we've had to actually, I have to think about that almost every single day, and as an artist still, and not getting ahead of myself, but staying in that place of rest. I think we want to sometimes go the opposite way, and we think even to try to, just obey God or to do what's right, it can get us in this place of doing and doing and doing instead of just this being, and God saying, lead from the place of who you are. Just lead as a son, lead as a daughter. You don't have to, lead from these places of doing, but it's leading from this place of just being and resting and letting him show up and do what he does in extraordinary ways. So that's just, I think a part of our journey. And I think all the time, I'm so thankful because we can think of people at the time kind of who signed around the same time we did when we signed with Rocketown, which was back in, 98, 99. We can think of people who their career just skyrocketed. And it was like they were number one this, number one that, selling so many records. And we can think of probably 10 of those people. We talk about it sometimes in the car. We're like, where's that person? They literally fell off the face of the earth. What happened to that guy, or what happened to that girl? Or you hear something, man, just so sad to hear, and we think all the time, it's like just obviously by his grace, but we're just so thankful. I would much rather have this just slow climb of just cultivating faithfulness each day of our lives and finish strong, run the race that's before us and finish strong, throwing off sin that we can so easily entangle us. And just, that's what I pray for all the time. God, continue just to give us this, just a steady, slow climb of faithfulness, just one day after another. I'm going to be faithful to you, God. I'm going to be faithful to my family. I would much rather have that than any kind of skyrocket in the journey. I'd just much rather have this slow, steady build, and just want to encourage you with that where you are today, that he knows where to find you and that he will lift up your cause. And I know, because we've been there, you know, and still to this day have those feelings of, you know, should we do a big 100-city tour? Should we get on a bus and, you know, drag our kids out and do 40 dates? And it's like, no, you know, or just if that's what God puts in front of us, yes. But if we're okay with that resting in that slow build of faithfulness and just stewarding what he's put in front of us in the moment and trusting him with it and knowing that he's going to take care of the outer rings of our lives. And do you have something to...
No, I was just going to say, I kind of hope you see kind of just as we tell you these stories, there's just, even hearing Christy say it, there's a kind of a certain rhythm of God's, just how he's faithful and he's patient with us. And there was just a lot of, you know, and obviously inside of all these stories, there's a lot of Christy and I staring at each other like, what are we going to do? And Christy on the artistic side's like, I want to make a record. I'm writing these songs. And I'm on the other side thinking, man, we got to like pay a mortgage, you know, we got to like pay bills, and records equals money. So no records equals no money, you know, kind of a thing. And that's what I love. And I also think about some of the small decisions we've made in on our Watermark career that we solely based it on, well, that makes perfect sense financially. You know, let's go on that tour because we'll sell a lot of records and we'll sell a lot of tickets. We'll play in front of a lot of people. And it was the most miserable 3-4 months of our lives. And it was just that perfect example of like, okay, we figured it out. We got it figured out, so we're going to go do that. As opposed to relaxing. Okay, God, what do you want us to do? What have you put in what is your heart for our lives? You know, and just to relax and not try to figure it out. Are most of you, who are just like worship leaders? Like you're the worship pastor at your church. And then how about like just you're a musician in your church? Like you're the guitar player, the bass player, background vocal singer. Cool. Well, Christy and I spent a lot of years with Charlie at a local church in Oklahoma City. We're in a local church now. But Charlie was the worship pastor. Christy worked with the singers. I worked with the band. And so we're totally down with the stuff that you guys kind of deal with day to day. And I think a lot of these things we talk about, sometimes I'm always like, God, I don't know. Sometimes our story, it's like, yeah, we got this record deal, and then we didn't have a record deal, and then went on this tour, and, you know. And then if I was in your place listening, I'd kind of be like, what are you whining about? What are you griping about? Oh, I'm sorry, you had to go on a tour. Oh, it's too bad for you, you know. But obviously, as you know, it's like you take tour and then you put, your spring conference and you put that in place, and you put the women's conference that you got to lead worship at 6 times. You know, you put that in place of whatever, you know, piece that we have, and it's all the same. Y'all know it's all the same. It's a constant prioritizing your own personal journey of where God's taking you. Musically, you have gifts in your heart. You want your gifts to come out. You want to have a place for your gifts. You want to, you know, you just want to be able to express yourself creatively. And sometimes that gets hung up quite a bit. So I want y'all to see just the, I don't know, as we talk about all this stuff, it's, you can just put in your own situation inside of our story, and it's just all the same. We trip through life just like you guys do, figuring out family time versus creative time, music, and all that. So,
I think that, as I was saying before, when we felt the Lord saying, become available to me, and we kind of broke those ties and spent that time, and I remember Louis, he and Shelley had always been a place through the years since we were involved in Passion that we would go to, and we'd meet with them, and we'd, pick their brain and say, what should we do, or listen to these songs, or, what do you think our record should be called? Actually, Louis came up with the name Watermark, and so they were kind of like this, big brother and sister to us that we would kind of go sit with, and I remember, those times of just going to them and asking them, their opinion, and that kind of turned into us, building even a stronger relationship with them. And I remember one of the things that Louis would always say is, make sure you have a blessing going out. And so we spent that time, just however we ended things well with Watermark. But I think the neat thing to remember in that situation for us was that, we didn't know what that ending was about, but it took 3 years. In that time, there was this space of, like I was saying, just of me being home and learning to trust him with my cause, and but at the end of that time, it was neat because we the kind of this next chapter of where we are now is that we're in Atlanta, Georgia. As a lead worshiper, I really have come to a place, I think recently, where God has called me, and probably for you too, I would imagine you've either already hit this place in your life or that God is going to lead you to this, but I think it's that step by step of just moving to spiritual food and getting away from the milk, and moving to solid food as a lead worshiper. And I felt God, calling me into that, and really kind of this place of asking me to mature more and more in that, and that there's not going to be this place that I've arrived. It's like I'm going to have to continue to mature in that, and especially for the ability to bring younger worship leaders underneath and start that process of mentoring, and what that might look like, and that there is going to be that time where I'm going to be shoved a bit to the stage right, almost all the way to the edge, and then at some point off the stage, and letting this new generation come, which is hard to think about, but at the same time exciting to think about, that I could be a part in that, of the future of the local expression of the body of Christ, and raising up some people. And I think one of the things that's just blessed me so much recently has been kind of studying the life of a Levite and what that looks like. And if you've never done that, it's extraordinary to look into the calling of a Levite. And one of the verses recently. It's Deuteronomy 10:8, I think, or 8:10. Let me make sure, but it's just a simple little verse that I read that kind of just turned my world upside down, but it's Deuteronomy 10:8. It says, "At that time the Lord set apart the tribe of Levi to carry the ark of the covenant of the Lord, to stand before the Lord, to minister to him, and to bless in his name to this day." And that's something recently that so encouraged me. Really, it says that he set the Levites apart to carry the ark of the covenant, which is his presence. Isn't that a beautiful thought, to think that we're carriers of his presence? And first, it's our honor and our privilege to stand before him and to minister to him. It says first, to stand before the Lord and to minister to him, and then to bless others in his name. And recently, I've just been so challenged by that as a lead worshiper. First of all, that during the week, it's going to take some time and some set apartness to come in and to be a carrier of his presence that morning. And you're speaking and you're singing truth and blessing the people in his name. And one of the things that's been, I think, so incredible was mixing intercession in with worship, mixing praying for the people in with your worship, literally as you're leading, having that attitude of prayer over the people and standing before the Lord and ministering to him first, and then being able to bless in his name. And I think that posture of being able to have that posture of welcome with your life in a worship setting of throwing off the sin that entangles us and doing what it takes to live that life of being clean before the Lord. And to think of that, just that I'm a carrier of his presence. And when I walk out in front of that, how many over 1,000 people on, almost every Sunday morning we're there, we lead, and they're expecting to be welcome to Jesus. They're expecting that we've all been on our knees in the green room, which we do. And they're expecting that I've set myself apart and that I've spent that time during the week of being familiar with the Father, so that I can welcome them into my familiar with the Father. And that's a part of our calling as a Levite. And that's just been so encouraging to me lately, just to remember that simple verse of, to be a carrier of his presence and to stand before him and minister to him first, and then to bless others in his name. That's been just a really neat thing that God has brought to my heart, just that verse just recently. Just wanted to encourage you with that. And really, I think not to oversimplify it, but I think sometimes it is good to simplify it and go, what is my calling as I'm standing before these people this morning? And I remember those three things. Sometimes it's just a great thing to look in his word and go, okay, I can get my head and my heart around that this morning, that in this week, is that I've got to be in a place this week of remembering that I need to be able to be ready to stand in his presence and stand before the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and minister to him in his presence, and then be able to be at a place of healing in my own heart, that I can have something to give. I can have a blessing to give to the people, and I can view them in a new way as I'm remembering that I'm a carrier of his presence. I can view the people not as in a place of being fatigued and them wearing me out. It's this place of I'm filled up and I can bless you in his name because I've been with him this week and I'm full of who he is, and I'm carrying who he is this morning, and or whatever time your service is. Ours is getting ready to be lots of times. We're getting ready to add services, but I know it can be exhausting, but I hope that simplicity, even though it's rich and it's deep, I hope that will energize you, as you stand before the people, that this is your calling, this is your place. And even as a guitar player and a bass player. What I just have loved about the players that we have at our church, none of us get paid. No, nobody, not even Louie. We're all at this point. It's still startup mode, and no one's getting paid. There's maybe like 3 people in our church, like, children's minister and like a grounds facility guy that's getting paid. But, our guys will come and they bring that. They realize that they too, our bass player and our, drummers, they get that. Like, I'm a carrier of his presence today. And I'm going to play my instrument to minister to the Lord first, and I'm going to bless others through my instrument this morning in his name. And so you don't have to be the one on the microphone, but our guys will do that with their whole body. They're just playing with all their might and playing as if, they're in the presence of the Almighty God. And it's a beautiful thing to watch, but just want to encourage you with that as well. And we would love to answer questions. I think we have like 15 minutes, so I think there's a microphone as well. And anything from production things, Nathan would love to answer that, or songwriting, worship leading, working with worship teams. Thankfully, through our years, that God has let us do a lot of different things, and we've made a ton of mistakes.
We've made a lot of mistakes.
But any questions?
Yeah.
We should.
I've always been moved by you guys with the apparent strength of your marriage and your focus on parenting and like that. It's been great to hear your story as you've gone through those times, and then times of settling back, and then times where God's really swept you off your feet. Have you found that when God's really swept you away, that it's been natural to keep the focus on your parenting and on your marriage, or has it been you've really had to take intentional focus on there to make sure you remember that? And so if you can comment on that.
Yeah.
I think what we've discovered is we can't separate it. We can't separate family, ministry. It kind of has to be all one thing, and how that looks like with even doing a record. Because for example, Christy's last record, I'm producing it. Christy's the artist, and we're writing a majority of the songs. And we're recording most of it at our house. So there's no way the kids can't, not be involved. They're just there. And I love the story you say when we were starting to write. When we were getting ready to write, I guess it was about 1.5 years ago, getting ready to write all these songs for Christy's record. Christy sat all the kids down. And we have 3 kids. Noah's 11, Ellie is 8, and Annie is 4. Ellie's 9. Golly, she's 9. And Christy said, okay, kids, Mommy's getting ready to record a new record, and Mommy has to write 12 songs, brand new. She's got to make them all up. And, and she was like, what can you guys do to help Mommy? And, and they're all looking at her like, what did they say? Like, yeah, and Annie, our 4-year-old, we can be kind to each other, like, we can not fight,
Got it. Yeah, so I think, that's been one of the things that God has had to show us, is that, yes, you do have to be intentional. And part of that intentionality has been, and this has been just a real, either he keeps bringing it back, and I didn't remember it, which is, Israelites in us, but just that, you can invite them into the process. And if you're a worship leader, take your kids with you in the morning. Let them run around in the church, and let them feel a part of the process. I think that a part of that as a parent is, it's not only it's also our job, to help them determine the voice of the Holy Spirit. The voices that they hear, it's either themselves, the enemy, or the Holy Spirit. And so helping them decipher But to do that, you have to invite them into what you're doing. And I've realized that it's not easy. It's not the easiest way. The easiest way is like get a babysitter and go to a cabin and write songs. But it's not the best for them, you know. And I think one of the things that we're even talking about doing is at church, you know, our son Noah is really interested in drums. He's interested in electric guitar, and so we're going to get him a mix going on Sunday mornings when we sound check, and he's going to sit behind the drummer and just be quiet but watch the drummer and just sit with the drummer's mix in his ears and just watch him. And I think that's a way we're not leaving him behind. We're helping him have some tools for the future if God continues to open that door for him. But just looking for ways, I think, to invite them into what you're doing and not always, you know, oh, you'll do that later, you know, but equipping them as you go and having that relationship with them as you go. Were you going to say something else? We have 10 minutes, yeah.
Thank you. I was just wondering how the songwriting process works for you guys, because your lyrics are so raw and vulnerable and heartfelt. Do you ever just sit down and say, okay, we're going to write a song? Or do you, I don't know, does it kind of come naturally? And Christy, do you do more of the lyrics versus Nathan the music, or vice versa? And I know that on the earlier records, he used to sing a lot more, and now and I wish you guys would sing together more. But just kind of how that process comes together.
It's kind of different. It's kind of all over the map, but in general, pretty much, I write the lyrics. Nathan's more in melodies and arrangements. And he does comment on lyrics if I ask him, you know, like, what do you think? You like this better or whatever. He's great about that. And but most of all, I write them just in everyday life, mostly in my car. Just have my little iPhone, and I sing things into my phone, and so I don't lose it. Otherwise, it's gone forever. Just any little ideas, and then I compile and compile and compile, and then he's also compiling hooks and little piano intros and ideas and how do you like this, and then we do schedule time where we do get a babysitter and we spend a few hours a week where we get those ideas together. And so he'll start playing one of those hooks and I'll start fleshing out some of the little lyrical ideas on my phone, and most of the time, that's when the Holy Spirit he'll mold it all together. And then we've also just discovered just the joy of co-writing as well. And we've got just amazing songwriters that live right near us. And Chris Tomlin has a little cabin that we sometimes all, meet at and write together. And also even just my songs for this record that we wrote together, we also just take them to Chris, and we take them to Matt Redman, or I remember just in a hotel room letting Matt hear all my songs, and I said, you can say whatever you want. And he won't take credit. He changed some words here and there, and he's like, I'm not taking any writer's credit. He's like, but he was honest. Some of them he butchered, and some of them he was like, that's ready to go, But I think that I've had to learn I'm better off for kind of saying, what do you think, and letting other people kind of tear them apart a bit. But
has that process evolved through the Watermark days versus now?
Yeah, I think we do way more co-writing now. In the Watermark days, we wrote way more together, but I think that's also because we're writing more corporate worship now. I think the difference, I think people always say, like, when's Watermark going to get back together? And I was like, well, we are together. We are Watermark. We just go by Christy Nockels now. And that's just mainly because I do a lot of women's events and things like that. Nathan was ready to kind of not being the photo shoots and not do the artist thing. And I've been able to go on tours with, other church leaders and things, he stays home with the kids and works works during the day and stuff. But it's just kind of freed him up to be able to do production stuff more, and it's been a. But the records now, I mean, even Into the Glorious, I mean, I think people have said this is more like Watermark than anything you've ever done. So, and he sings a lot more. So.
Christy and I, like, I'm literally like in the Watermark days, we'd have studio guys doing a lot of stuff, and Christy would sing on that, and I would do a little harmony. A lot of songs on this record is just, I'll make all the music in the basement. Christy comes down and sings the vocals. So it's like, they're kind of more Watermark now than ever, really.
From the perspective of writing worship songs and then bringing them to your team for arrangement, can you give us any tips on that? So you've got the structure of a song, and then you bring your musicians together to try to arrange this. Any tips?
Okay, cool. I guess this will be the last question. It's a good question, because it's hard, isn't it? Taking your song, your precious song, you've worked so hard, and then you're letting people hear it, seeing how they react and all that. Well, I think for us, as soon as you go into that situation, there's got to be a cook, in the kitchen. There's going to only be one. And since you're the one that wrote it, you need to kind of be the one that's like, it needs to, you need to be where the buck stops kind of a thing. And if it's not feeling right, you should be able to say that. It is a scary thing. I think for us, when we write songs, there definitely is those rehearsal days. Usually it can be in sound check, but we're not going to do it that day. But we'll grab 10 or 15 minutes and just run the song. So there's no pressure. There's no, if the arrangement doesn't work out, there's no big deal. We're not doing it today, so no big. We'll try it next week. And we've done that a lot. There's a song on the new Passion record, the White Flag record, called Not Ashamed. It's the first song on the record. And that was actually, the original tempo on that song was like Matt Redman's Never Let Go. Oh, no, you never let go. So I think it was, I can't even sing Not Ashamed to that groove, but Not Ashamed was originally in that kind of groove. It's real slow, and so we kind of kept going over it, never felt right, and then during sound check at one of Chris's shows, Daniel, I think the guitar player, was like, man, what if we just did this double time and just sped the whole thing up super fast? And so it took a long time for the arrangement to feel right. Then all of a sudden it was like, yeah, that works, and that clicks. But it had to feel right for the person that wrote it, and that's kind of where the buck stopped. But it takes a lot of time sometimes.
One more. Yeah, right here. I'm going to just yell it. 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You guys said something that was pretty counterintuitive and kind of across the culture of what we see in the industry, which is God will lift you up your cause. The scripture says Jesus made himself of no reputation, and yet there has to be in the artist inner struggle to always kind of remember that. How do you press that reality into the hearts of up-and-coming worship team members, future leaders, as you're mentoring them? How do you press that reality to the spotlight is to spotlight Jesus, not your own thing to be a platform to launch to bigger and greater things, and just be a servant? How do you guys press that into people's hearts?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've been just encouraging them with is just that I think that in all of our lives, you got to wake up, and I think these are just simple heart postures, we call them. Just posturing your heart to let God meet all the God needs that he's put in you. So if he's put a cause in you, then it's his job to meet that, to lift that up. If he put the gift in you, then it's his to promote. And so in order to live that out every day, I think it's looking to him to meet the God needs and not looking around you, because otherwise you're always looking to that stage or that moment that your song is going to be heard. It's instead of glorifying that stage, I've heard it said by just surrendering a position for his presence. And you've got to be able to figure out in your life, what do you want more? Do you want his presence, or do you want a position on a stage? I think so. It's looking to God to meet the God needs. And if you're in this position, if you're in this posture, and you're like, yeah, I'm looking to you. I'm not looking to any other stage, any record deal, anybody to play my song. I'm looking to you, God, today, and then I'm going to receive from you my validation. I'm going to receive from you that only you can put your thumbprint on me. Only you can look at my song and say, yeah, that's mine, you're mine. And then if you're in this posture to receive, then you're able to, I think, keep that fullness in your heart of just, I'm approved, I'm okay, he's lifting me up, I'm going to look to him. And I think just that process, for whatever reason, it works naturally, because that's just, it begins to happen in your life, that you'll find that looking to him, receiving from him, and then just having this heart of gratitude for what he's put in you and how he's made you. And Psalm 139, just that we're intricately made and that we're wired and we're gifted, and he's put that in us, that ultimately, why wouldn't it be his, to promote? And I think the scripture's just full of that process. And so just keeping that process it's just every day you wake up, it's, I'm not gonna look to others or a stage today to lift up my cause. I'm gonna look to the one who put it in me, because he's the one that's gonna make it happen. He's the one that's gonna promote it more than anybody ever. That's just gonna be at a place where I think when you're here, you're gonna start going, and then you get those compliments. You start getting that validation. I've heard one thing that I've just felt like God has really said to me so strong one time. It's just that sometimes he will withhold the very validation that we seek from people. He'll withhold it because he knows that we'll take it as good enough for us. Like he'll withhold, if there's one person you really just want to get, you want to catch their eye, or you want them to hear your song, it's like he'll withhold it on purpose. And you're like, why can't I get that person's approval in my life? And it's just because God's not he's shutting their lips. He's not allowing them to give you what you want, because he knows that you'll take that as good enough. He's saying, I want you to see that I made you. I put my stamp of approval. I put my thumbprint on you because I made you. I wired you. It's mine to promote. And when we get that, then you see him. You see him do extraordinary things with that cause, and you're like, oh, that's extraordinary. That's amazing. That's who he is. And that process, it just works because that's his word. But anyway, y'all be encouraged today. I hope this was just uplifting for right where you are, and just be blessed. And thanks for coming. Thanks so much.